Before our show today, we have a quick announcement. Many of you have told us that you want to learn more about the fundamentals of business, but from a regenerative next economy perspective. Lift Economy recently created the Next Economy MBA, a 9-month project-based learning course starting in January 2018. The goal of this course is to help you increase your understanding of next economy business fundamentals, learn about tools, tips, and tricks that can increase your thought leadership in this space and help you find or create a career that aligns with your deeper purpose. To learn more, check out www.lifteconomy.com/MBA. That's www.lifteconomy.com/MBA. There are only 12 spots available, so please sign up soon. If you want more information, you can view the recording from our first intro webinar on our website, and we're offering one more free intro webinar on December 4th. We hope you can join us. Welcome to Next Economy Now. I'm your host, Andrew Baskin. The goal of this interview series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, democratic, diverse, transparent, and whole systems approach to using business as a force for good. In this episode of Next Economy Now, Kevin Bayuk, a partner at Lift Economy, interviews Frederick Schilling. Frederick serves as partner and co-CEO of Big Tree Farms, a sustainable organic supply chain company based in Indonesia. They develop supply chains for value-added exotic and premium commodities and ingredients that are sold into the international organic, natural, and specialty markets. Big Tree Farms products include coconut, palm, sugar, cacao and chocolate, coconut water concentrate, exotic peppercorns, Balinese sea salt, exotic and rare honeys, cashews, moringa, and other ingredients for the raw food market. In 2007, he co-founded AMMA, a vertically integrated artisan chocolate company located in Salvador, Brazil, the first premium artisan chocolate company in Brazil that's fully integrated from farm to finished product. In Kevin's conversation with Frederick shares his process of overcoming his perception of business as the root of all evil to realizing that it can be used as a force for good. Frederick shares the rippling beneficial impact of empowering women through their supply stream decisions. He talks about Big Tree Farms' voluntary choice to steer clear of harmful agrochemicals and prioritize their environmental and social mission along with their economic goals. And Frederick talks about how he finds a sense of fun in business by viewing business as a sort of puzzle to be put together in the right way. So without further ado, please enjoy Kevin Bayuk's conversation with Frederick Schilling.
So excited for you to be here, Frederick. Thanks for making space and time to share with us.
My pleasure.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your story and what you've navigated and how you ended up at Big Tree, and just some of the background would be really helpful.
Sure. I think my background and how I got to where I am now is a similar common story amongst entrepreneurs, in that really not having an idea or even a passion or a clue on how to create a business, or even acknowledging the fact that you want to have your own company. And it started with me back in my late 20s, when I was actually a musician living in Boulder, Colorado. And I've always had a deep passion for food, of course, the environment and social economies, as I think many of us do have these days. And with a background of religion, I was a religion major at school. I've always had a deep fascination with the Mesoamerican cultures. So in my late 20s, it just dawned on me that, wow, wouldn't it be great to create an organic chocolate company, really bring forth these beautiful ideals that the Mesoamerican culture had for the cacao bean that simply, for whatever reason, has been lost in our modern society. And this is back in 2000, before the chocolate business kind of is what it is today. And that was it. It was just an idea of wanting to kind of retell the story of cacao and the sanctity of how the Mesoamerican cultures regarded this sacred bean. And that was it. And started making chocolate in my home kitchen, more of just a kind of love affair and a fling of, again, loving food. And I shared it with friends, and it really got to the point where they said, Frederick, you've really got to put this in the store so I can actually buy it. And I wasn't making any money playing music at the time. So I said, why not? Let's go ahead and give it a shot. And it took off. And that was Dagoba Chocolate back in 2001. And that started my career in the organic food industry. And, as many entrepreneurs, the snowball just started rolling down the hill. And I really, I learned that business can be fun. And it's very much of a creative endeavor. Back in my youth, I was very much of the mindset that money is the woe of all evils, and business is the reason why our earth is, not in a great state right now, and really just wanted to kind of exile myself from society. In fact, I was thinking of going to a monastery in Tibet for a while. But then, as I got into business, quickly learned that you can utilize business and the monetary exchange that you gain through your business for good. There's no reason why you cannot use this money, this capital that's coming into your pockets or your bank account, and flip it and really use it for the benefit of mankind. And so with Dagoba Chocolate, that was the impetus of that enterprise, of really just using it for planet, people, and profit. That triple bottom line principle that many of us are now familiar with. And fortunately, many companies, large and small, are embracing. So started with Dagoba Chocolate, sold that in 2006, and have continued on with my passion and mission for really wanting to do good things for the world, and utilizing business as the catalyst. So after Dagoba Chocolate, started Big Tree Farms with my current business partner.
Wonderful. So it started, it sounds like, with kind of a motivation to just explore what was alive in you, and kind of engaging humanity with a sacred relationship with this Mesoamerican tropical bean. And through that, discovering that business as a reciprocity engine could be leveraged for all sorts of different good outcomes. And then from there, you've kind of continued through that to invent new entities that are doing some of this. Can you talk a little bit about some of the newer endeavors like Big Tree Farms, and what you're up to, and what types of beneficial impact outcomes you're orienting towards?
Yeah, so at Big Tree Farms, it's an incredible company. And the reason why it's so incredible is because it's really the people that make the company. I mean, myself and my business partner, co-founder Ben Ripple, we may have been the ones that were the instigators, and still, a couple of the drivers within the enterprise. But as any company, it's the people that make it. And so Big Tree Farms, we're based in Indonesia, with our headquarters on Bali. And in 2008, myself and Ben really set out with the vision of working with impoverished cacao farmers in Indonesia. Indonesia happens to be the third largest producing country of cacao in the world, but the quality is very subpar. It's not the highest quality cacao in the world. And organic cacao was not existent at that time. So we set out to work with initially Balinese cacao farmers and convert them to organic farming practices, and really teach them how to properly ferment the cacao beans, which is really, really important for a high quality tasting chocolate. And then expand outwards throughout Indonesia. And we built a chocolate factory on Bali. And it's a beautiful structure, but the mission was really about chocolate and working with cacao farmers. But then we started hearing about science and the benefits of coconut sugar. And coconut sugar happens to be one of the oldest known sweeteners to mankind. It predates honey in the written records, actually. And there are written records in Sumerian texts about palm sweeteners. And coconut sugar is the traditional sweetener of Southeast Asia. So therefore, it's been around for thousands of years. And it's produced from the flower blossom nectar of the coconut tree. And it just so happens that Indonesia is really ground zero for this sweetener globally. So if you've ever been to Indonesia, in particular the island of Java, you'll quickly realize that coconut sugar is everywhere. It's everywhere. It's like I always use the analogy of corn in Iowa. I mean, it's just, you can't turn a corner in Java and not be exposed to this incredible sweetener. So all of a sudden the science started coming out about the benefits of this sweetener, which is low glycemic. It's the most nutrient dense sweetener, with maple syrup being the second most nutrient dense. Coconut sugar is the most sustainable sweetener because it's a tree crop in the tropics, so it supports biodiversity in the forest. And so it was really just a aha moment for us that we've got to bring this sweetener to the rest of the world. And so in 2008, we had about 350 farmers in our supply chain. Today, 9 years later, more or less, we have over 14,000 farmers. So that vision of wanting to work with impoverished farmers and bring transparency for them to the broader market, primarily focused around cacao, all of a sudden about faced, and we focused on the coconut supply chain. We still work with cacao farmers. We still have that chocolate factory, yet that coconut sweetener vision really propelled us to where we are now. And today, we actually operate the largest organic coconut supply chain in Southeast Asia. We're Indonesia's largest organic food company. We have over 400 employees in Indonesia. So it really, again, kind of what started off as this dream, in a way, this vision of just wanting to kind of start making the world a better place, it just started snowballing into a whole enterprise of its own, this whole entity of its own. And it's a really beautiful company that all of the employees have helped create. We've seen our farmers' income increase by over 300%. So it's really impacting positively these communities that were once very impoverished, because coconut farmers tend to be the most impoverished farmers in the world, bar none. So it's really been a beautiful thing to see these traditional coconut farming communities really increase their standard of living. And with that increase of standard of living, of course, you start to see just general health increase, and not just in terms of physical health, but mental health, emotional health. Half of our supply chain are women, because women do participate in the supply chain. So we've positively impacted over 7,000 women in the supply chain in these communities, and empowering them. And therefore, once they have money in their pocket, let's be frank, and it's women tend to be a little more frugal with dollars than men, especially when it comes to the household. And so they're able to take care of their children. Children then go to school. Children then have school uniforms. Then once children start going to school and the women are empowered, the community health increases. And so we've seen just really beautiful improvements and positive impacts happen within our supply chains. And for us, we have no intention of slowing down, because we recognize the larger you are as a company, the more impact you can have, the more leverage you have to really make beautiful, beneficial changes in the world.
Excellent. The choice, it almost sounds like the way you frame it, it's not even a choice for you. I think maybe it stems from this recognition that human relationship with potentially sacred plant allies, whether cacao or coconut, that it's almost a profanity to dump pesticides or herbicides in the environment, and not only for human health, but the environmental health. But you've chosen organic. You're one of the earliest voluntarily organic from the get-go chocolatiers, and then obviously with the sweetener. And you've mentioned organic a few times. How does that fit for you? I mean, is it even a consideration, or what lengths do you need to go to ensure those types of practices in your supply chain? And what are your thoughts about what the rest of the economy is doing, and what are you excited about? What are you disappointed about?
Well, I think you kind of nailed it in a very blatant, eloquent way, in that dumping pesticides into our soil and into the plant kingdom that we so readily depend on is profane. It is a profanity, and it's a major scar in the history of humankind. And I believe that in the very near future, we're going to look back at our brief period of time dumping these chemicals into the soil, into the water, onto these plants, as just a really dark era of human experimentation and greed, and ignorance for that matter. And I think that, we are moving away from that. And of course, there are companies that will fight that, and there are consumers that will remain ignorant to it. Yet, if we look at the food industry, and if we look at what segments of the food industry is growing, it's the organic industry. And so the consciousness of consumers the consumership consciousness is changing, and companies have to respond to the demand of the consumer. It's the rare company that can actually really manipulate the consumer. I think Apple is probably one of the few companies that really can dictate human patterns of habits. Yet when it comes to food and general health, companies that play in that market really are at the whim of what consumers want. And right now we're seeing, globally, that consumers want healthier foods. They're much more aware of the effects of bad quality foods, sugar. And I say that, as we are the largest producer of coconut sugar in the world, but it's true. Humans consume too much sugar. And so we are human. We're always going to eat sugar. Our body needs it. Our brains actually need glucose to survive. So it's not that humans are going to stop consuming the sugar. We just have to make sure that we consume the right kinds of sugar. So it's the world is changing very quickly in the eyes of industry, and how the food companies are going to move forward and produce and market the foods. And I think ultimately that's going to mean organic continues to grow, and eventually non-organic food is really going to fall by the wayside and be a very small percentage of global food production. I mean, that's my crystal ball. It's a hope. I have faith, but I do think that's what's happening.
I definitely am in alignment with that aspiration and supportive of the journey and the work that people like yourselves are doing to manifest that. This voluntary choices, you've made choices that in how you're treating your supply chain people, the economic self-determination, the community impacts, the increase in their income, and the side effects of that. What about the environment besides just organic? Is there certain choices that you're making with partnering with suppliers and certain practices? I'm curious about how you're thinking about, obviously even choosing tree crops right off the bat is from a carbon cycle, nutrient cycling perspective, soil health perspective, is already taking a stand for the environment and the biodiversity and the habitat. But I'm wondering if are any of your suppliers looking at polyculture of yields or local yields or what's next for you, your company, the supply chain with regards to the environment?
Whew, that's a big question. You bring up the question of choice, and I think all of us are born and also influenced by whatever external factors to be who we are. And I know for myself, this is who I am, and I am wired to think about the environment and be passionate about the environment and love the environment and really look at the environment as an element of cohabitation. I mean, this is our planet. I like having plants inside my house. It's green is good. And so I'm going to make sure that I do everything I can to support the environment. And so, in my companies, it's always been important to have a very strong environmental mission attached to our social mission and also our profitability mission. And so what's next is, I think, really just to continue growing our supply chains amongst our farmer base. Right now we're over 14,000. Now this is just Indonesia. And if we can continue to grow that supply chain to 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, and be able to instill our principles into the farming community, then we're just growing that organic ethos. And the reality of it is, most of these farmers, they don't want to be applying pesticides to their farming land. They don't. It's just they've been told that by applying these chemicals, your yield is going to increase, therefore you're going to make more money. And they've been caught in this vicious cycle of having to do it, because if they don't do it, the perception is your yield is going to decrease, therefore my income's going to decrease, and therefore I can't take care of my family. But we know that's not true. Organic agriculture does support the output just as non-organic does on a long-term basis. And, for us, it's all about reminding the farming community of, look, this is what your grandparents did, or what even your parents did, works. You don't have to adhere to these falsehoods of having to apply artificial fertilizers, or these horrible chemicals that are still being sold in developing countries that have been banned in the United States for decades. They're still sold in the global market, like DDT. And so it's for us, it's all about continuing to grow. And one of my heroes is Paul Hawken, and he just wrote a book called Climate Drawdown. And it's a beautiful book, and I've had the opportunity to speak with him, one-on-one, and also in forums. And he's laid out this plan it's a very simple plan. And I really recommend it to everyone who's reading. It's basically basic steps that can be taken as individuals, but also as business, to help, turn back the tide of global warming. Because as he says so eloquently, we all use the term climate change right now. And he's like, that's bullshit. Quite frankly, that term is bullshit, because the climate is always changing. The environment is always in a state of change. If it weren't, then we would be in trouble. So he's like, global warming is in fact really what's happening. And we can't dispute this fact. The planet is warming up. And here are some really basic things that we can do to turn back the tides, draw down the temperature. And what he lays out is so accessible that I want to make sure that Big Tree Farms and say my company, AMMA Chocolate in Brazil, we can apply these to our own supply chains, really help participate in the drawdown, the climate drawdown. And so again, it kind of comes back to utilizing business as a catalyst for change. We have a tool, let's use it. In the farming community in Indonesia, the beautiful thing about it, there's so many beautiful things about it, but one of the really, really innate beautiful things about these traditional supply chains is that they are already biodiverse in nature. Bill Mollison, who is kind of regarded as the godfather of permaculture, he was Australian, and he got the idea of permaculture in Bali, because in Bali, their traditional farming is what we call food forests. So you'd walk into someone's backyard, and it looks like just kind of jungle, chaos. But the fact of the matter is, every plant and tree has been planted with a purpose. And so these traditional food forests that already exist in our supply chain really is a key link in that, what, again, Paul Hawken refers to as climate drawdown. So we just want to continue moving along and checking those boxes. And what was really, really, really interesting in the list that Paul Hawken presented, and by the way, this list is not just him. I want to say it's over 100 highly intelligent individuals from the science community, the literary community, who really just kind of came together as a brain trust and put this forward, unbiased. But the number one thing that we can do to contribute to climate drawdown is empowerment of women and education of girls. Those two things together is number one. And so for us at Big Tree Farms, where empowering women is very much a part of our supply chain and mission, and then also seeing how that benefits the community and children going to school. For us, it just it's a key. It's a really, really big key. And we're really proud that we're able to support what we do, not only to support the communities, but also the environment.
Really excellent. I'm smiling a little bit because I don't know if you know, but I was one of the senior fellows on Project Drawdown, working with Paul for the last 3 years. So
I didn't know that. I love it. I love it.
Kind of funny. And I just want to celebrate the work that you're doing, because the acknowledgement that the indigenous practices of multi-strata agroforestry in smallholder settings, which the business as usual economy has marginalized those practices and really exploited the land and people into commodity export monocultural practices, which have been incredibly destructive to communities and, of course, the climate. And here you're bringing business in an economic engine to glorify, really, and celebrate that these practices, these indigenous practices, are important, not only locally, but are globally significant. And there's very few businesses that are voluntarily doing that, seeking those opportunities. And then, of course, building on that by using transparency in your supply chain and leveraging the market premiums for driving up the income of these rural populations, which is resulting in these family planning and education of girl outcomes that lead to further mitigation of carbon emissions and climate beneficial impacts. I think it's rare to find a business that's focusing on all those levels in different places in the globe. So I'm really celebrating the work that you're doing. I'm curious if there's other things, but you mentioned Drawdown, which is, I'm again excited, and you mentioned permaculture, two of my favorite things, but is there other reference points that you're watching, things that you're excited about beyond those things that maybe you'd like to share with our listeners? We're always hearing feedback that people are curious about what you're watching, because you've been at the head or at the lead, since 2001, since before then. And so what are you watching? Who are you reading, or what kind of references are you excited about, or businesses that you're excited about, allies, partners?
I am really fortunate to be surrounded with just incredible entrepreneurs. I feel that I'm very blessed to have colleagues who are just absolute incredible human beings, spirits, and business leaders in the organic food business. I really do feel that the organic food industry is really one of the prime industries that is driving change for the world. There's definitely, clean tech, which of course is so important, clean energy. Yet the organic food business is really just, I feel, on the forefront of making change. And I am absolutely honored and blessed to have colleagues in this industry that are doing amazing things. I happen to be a part of a leadership group called OSC Squared, or OST2. And this is a group of leaders, CEOs, founders of companies that are individually just doing, just amazing things. Guayaki, Yerba Mate, Numi Tea, Alter Eco, Rebel, Lotus Foods. I mean, the list goes on and on. My apologies for the other companies I didn't list, but they're all just, dear friends of mine, but they also have my utmost respect and admiration as thought leaders and as business owners. All these companies are individually really doing incredible things in their own supply chains to make the world a better place and improve farmers' livelihoods and really help the environment. But we also come together once a month, and we look at tackling some of the industry's larger issues. And Paul Hawken has gracefully and fortunately been involved with the OSC in helping guide us in terms of what we can do as a collective group to come together and help with the Project Drawdown. But we also, as a group, look at issues of like packaging. Here we are as a group of social, environmental entrepreneurs doing everything we can to produce a really righteous food product, organic, non-GMO, fair trade, yet the majority of us pack our product in plastic. And all of us know plastics, they always end up in the landfill or the ocean. And all of us some years ago just kind of came together and said, we can't do this anymore. There has to be a better way to package our products. It's really the Achilles heel of our missions. So we've been working very, very hard in coming up with a true home compostable packaging. And my hat goes off to Alter Eco really for being the primary driver of the group to make that happen. And now it exists, this true home compostable packaging that companies can access to package their rice or their quinoa or their chocolate bar or their tea bag, whatever it may be. So it's inspiring to be surrounded by these beautiful entrepreneurs. And that's really what I look towards is my peers. Yeah, and of course I read the occasional book. I just read Homo Deus, which was very thought-provoking. And of course I'll read the comics to keep it all in perspective. But really I look to my peers for inspiration.
And that's a good set. Yeah, definitely seeing a lot of inspiration in that group, in the OSC community, that you're part of that community of practice. And mentioning the comics is actually great. One thing that you said at the outset, which is I think the first time we've heard it maybe on the Next Economy Now, is really focusing on how business can actually be fun and joyful, which is just rare for somebody to share that, even if some of the other people have been on maybe experience that. Do you want to elaborate a little bit about some of the things that are fun to you, maybe just as inspiration for the entrepreneurs who are listening and people involved as customers and supporters of your companies?
I view business as a puzzle, and I like puzzles. Not everyone does. So fortunately, I can see the beauty in business. I see it as a creative endeavor. And for those of you who are in business, or even who aren't in business and can't really grasp or wrap your head around the idea of how business can be fun or a creative endeavor, you think about it, and you have to create a brand name, you have to create a company name, you have to create packaging, you have to create the supply chain, the formulas, you have to create relationships. It's an incredible experiment of creativity. Of course, there are things that happen in business that aren't necessarily always fun. That's life. Life can be beautiful, and then 2 hours later, you can just have your head in your hands, in tears. But then the next day, you're fine again. And business is no different. Fortunately, I was born under the star of optimism. So even in the most stressful circumstances, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe that was nature, and maybe it was nurture from my mother's upbringing. But I really, really do view business as a fun, creative endeavor. And fortunately, I like puzzles because, as we all know, as business owners, it's a daily puzzle and trying to figure it out. And I find pleasure in that.
That's a great perspective and inspiring to hear you share it. What about maybe the last question? I'm kind of curious if is music going to come back into your life, or has it been the mainstay that's just unseen that we can't see through your businesses?
I so miss music, because it's such a big part of my life, and I think all of us can attest to the power of music and how music means so much to everyone. And for me, as being a musician, having that pulse in my body, and also that always hearing music in my head, but not necessarily allowing myself the time to play. I've been really, really bad about allocating time in my day to sit down and compose music, or just noodle around on the instruments. So that is definitely something that I do want to get back to. It's going to take some self-discipline. And I've been really bad about that because, again, I've been so enraptured in my businesses really just, satisfied on that creative level. That it's, that itch of music, I guess, has not been strong enough to pull me away from the business. Although truth be told, I really do miss strumming the guitar. I really do. I miss recording. I miss going into the recording studio and just experimenting. So hopefully soon.
Well, we got your back on that. As Big Tree grows from 14,000 to hundreds of thousands of farmers and maybe expands into additional tree crops and additional products, we'll make sure collectively as your customers and partners and allies to try and make sure that you get space for more music, because I'm sure that's a gift that you could bring into service. Just want to thank you for all the perseverance and the work, even the joyful solving of puzzles. It's not always easy, and dedicating yourself to your principles and making space to pursue that first calling of reintroducing a more sacred relationship with our vegetable allies is not everybody answers the call. So thank you for that, and thanks for your continued work. And we look forward to supporting you in all your endeavors, Big Tree and AMMA, and everything that comes down the road.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure.
Next Economy Now is a production of Lift Economy. Lift is an impact consulting firm whose mission is to create, model, and share a locally self-reliant economy that works for the benefit of all life. To listen to all our past episodes or to share your thoughts about the show with us, visit www.lifteconomy.com/podcast. That's LIFT economy.com/podcast. You can also subscribe to this podcast through iTunes, Overcast, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please take a moment to rate us on iTunes. It's really very helpful in allowing these ideas to reach a wider audience. Once again, thanks for listening.